The Joseph Series, Story Number 4, Joseph Resists Temptation, taken from Genesis chapter 39, verses 7 through 23. The previous story does not tell us how long it took for Joseph to advance from being a common slave in Potiphar's house to being his chief steward, nor does it tell us how long he enjoyed his exalted position. However, there is one thing about Joseph that is revealed. Joseph was extremely good-looking, and it caused him a lot of difficulty. You may recall the special attraction that the Egyptians had for Sarai when she and Abram went down to Egypt during the famine in Canaan. We are not told why the Egyptians found Sarai so beautiful. Perhaps just being a foreigner was enough to cause a Hebrew woman to appear exotic and especially attractive. Whatever the reason, a similar attraction appears to take place in this story, although the roles are reversed. Now Joseph was well built and very handsome, and after he had been there for some time, Potiphar's wife began to look at Joseph with longing in her eyes, and she said to him, "Come, sleep with me." But Joseph refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, because of me, my master does not have to concern himself with anything in this house. He has placed everything that he has under my care. There is no one greater in this house than I am. And my master has not kept back anything from me, except you, because you are his wife. How could I possibly do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And even though Potiphar's wife spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to listen to her. He refused to lie beside her or even spend time with her. But one day, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, it happened that none of the other men of the house were there. So Potiphar's wife caught Joseph by his clothing and said to him, "Come, sleep with me." But Joseph left his garment in her hands and fled and got out of the house. As soon as Potiphar's wife realized that Joseph's garment was still in her hands and he had fled out of the house, she began screaming for the men of the household and said to them, "Now do you see? My husband brought this Hebrew into this house to make fools of us. He came in and tried to force me to sleep with him, so I screamed as loud as I could. But as soon as I started screaming, he left his garment in my hand and ran out of the house to get away." So she kept Joseph's garment beside her and waited for her husband to come home. Then she told Potiphar the same story. "That Hebrew servant you brought in here to live with us, he came into my room to make a fool of me. But when I cried out and began screaming, he left his garment here beside me and ran out of the house." As soon as Potiphar heard the words of his wife, "This is how your servant treated me," Potiphar was furious. So Joseph's master took Joseph and threw him into prison, the same prison where the king's prisoners were confined. And Joseph remained there, in prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him great mercy. And Joseph found favor in the eyes of the warden in charge of the prison. And the warden put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison, so that if anything was accomplished in the prison, Joseph was the one to do it. In time, the warden did not even check on the work that Joseph was doing anymore, because the Lord was with Joseph, and the Lord made everything Joseph touched successful. The Joseph Series, Story Number 4, Joseph Resists Temptation, taken from Genesis chapter 39, verses 7 through 23.